I'm gonna be talking kind of quietly because it's like 2:30 in the morning and I don't want to disturb my sleeping parents. We have a pretty big house, so I can probably talk at full volume and it'll be fine, but I'm afraid to, so I'm not gonna. There's a clip going around Twitter earlier today of an interview that Trump did with Axios. I think that's how it's pronounced, on HBO, and I had thoughts. I thought about just talking about that one clip and why I thought it was absurd, but I figured why not just go all in and watch the entire interview? So that's what I'm gonna do. I have not watched this ahead of time. I maybe should have, so that I could be more articulate with whatever it is that I have to say, but I didn't, and I'm not going to now. Also, am I qualified to talk about politics? Probably not, but Donald Trump isn't really qualified to be president either, so I feel like it's fair game.
To what extent do you think that positive thinking mindset is suitable to handling the worst pandemic that we've seen in a century?
I think you have to have a positive outlook. Otherwise, you would have nothing without a positive outlook. I think we've done an incredible job between the ventilators and stopping very infected people from China coming in, meaning putting the ban on China, which frankly nobody wanted me to do, practically nobody, because it was very early in January. Then putting the ban on Europe, not an easy thing to do. When you put a ban on Europe, that's a big thing. We would have probably lost hundreds of thousands of lives more had I not done that. And all of the experts, every one of them, not one of them wanted to do it. They thought it was too severe. 3 months later, they're all saying, I'm glad you did it.
Were there experts saying to not enforce a travel ban? Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like most people understood why the travel ban was happening. Not to mention that pretty much every other country in the world right now has banned people from America because of how poorly we're handling the pandemic. So it's not this crazy radical thing to have a travel ban when there's a pandemic happening.
This was sent to us by China, one way or the other, and we're never going to forget it. Believe me, we're never going to forget it.
We love racism.
By June, we knew things were bad. And, you know, the last time I was with you was the day before your Tulsa rally in the Oval. And, you know, you were saying big, huge crowd, it was indoors.
By the way,
these people, they listen to you.
Excuse me, Jonathan.
Yeah.
We had a 19,000 seat stadium. First of all, we had 12,000 people, not 6,000, which you reported and other people report.
You're bragging about gathering even more people than were reported in a pandemic. I understand that your ego wants us to think that you have the support of a bunch of people. And so maybe to you, you think, I had twice as many people as that. You should be reporting on that because that shows how great I am. But in this case, the less people at your gathering, the better you look. Because the more people you have, the more you're disregarding everybody's safety.
When can you commit, by what date, that every American will have access to the same day testing that you get here in the White House?
Well, we have great testing. We're doing, and
by
many
what
other
date?
people do. Let me explain.
The testing. We have tested more people than any other country, than all of Europe put together times two. We have tested more people than anybody ever thought of. India has 1.4 billion people. They've done 11 million tests. We've done 55, it'll be close to 60 million tests. And, you know, there are those that say, you can test too much. You do know that. Who says that? Oh, just read the manuals, read the books. Read the books. Read the books. What books? What testing does? Let me explain. What testing does, it shows cases. It shows where there may be cases. Other countries test. You know when they test? They test when somebody's sick. That's when they test. And I'm not saying they're right or wrong. Nobody's done it like we've done it. We've gotten absolutely no credit for it. But we've come up with so many different tests. The only thing that we have now is some people have to wait longer than we'd like them to. We want point to point. We want to have a 5 minute to a 15 minute test. When we have, like, many others. Okay, I understand we're close to 50% where it's point to point test. We are making thousands of instruments, thousands of tests right now, tens of thousands that can be distributed to various parts of the country. But you have to understand, and we even sent some of them to other countries where they had a big problem. Jonathan, almost 50%, in fact, I think the number might be over, is immediate testing. You know this stuff. You take a test, you have to send it to a laboratory. Let's say that takes a day, right? It's a day typical. Yeah, so
But when do you think we'll have it for
I
everyone?
think that you
What
will
day?
have that relatively soon. I mean, again,
What does that mean?
You already have half.
Yeah.
I would much rather get back to you because I don't
Okay.
want to have you
That's
write
fine.
in 1 month.
That's
I
fine.
didn't make it. I missed it by
Yeah,
a day,
I
and
get
it's
it.
a headline.
I should have noted the timestamp when the interviewer first asked that question. Maybe when I'm editing, I'll pop it up. Right here is how long it took Trump to answer it. And at the end, we didn't even get an answer. And here's the thing. It's perfectly okay for him to say, you know what? I'm not sure. We're working on it. We're thinking soon, but I don't want to give an exact date. That is an acceptable answer. But he was just dancing around it the entire time. It took him so long to get there.
Because we tested so many people, 55, 60 million people very soon, we get cases. You test, some kid has even just a little runny nose, it's a case. And then you report many cases. So we look like we have more cases than massive countries like China, which, by the way, doesn't report, as you know.
Well, I don't put any stock in China's figures.
The point is, because we are so much better at testing than any other country in the world, we show more cases.
The figure I look at is death. And death is going up now.
Okay,
and it's 1,000 a day.
If you look at death...
Yeah, it's going up
look.
again.
Let's look.
Daily death.
Take a look at some of these charts.
I'd love to.
We're going to look.
Let's look.
And if you look at death...
Yeah. It's started to go up
Here's
again.
one. Well, right here, the United States is lowest in numerous categories. We're lower than the world.
Lower than the world?
Yeah, no kidding, man. If you look at our total cases, it's less than the total cases in the world. It is possible that he's looking at some sort of percentage, and our percentage in the US is lower than the overall percentage of the world. I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt and assume that that's what it is. But there's a very real possibility that this is just the numbers, and that he's saying that the numbers in the US are lower than the numbers in the world, which, like, yeah. This clip coming up is the one that made me want to watch the whole interview. So I'm gonna let it play, and then I'm gonna talk about it.
In what? In what?
Take a look. Right here. Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad.
Well,
Much worse than South Korea, Germany, etc.
you can't do that. You have
Why
to go,
can't I do that?
You have to go by where, look, here is the United States. You have to go by the cases. The cases
Why
are
not
there.
as a proportion of
When we have
population?
somebody, what it says is when you have somebody that has, where there's a case,
Oh, okay.
the people that live
Sure.
from
Oh.
those cases.
It's surely a relevant statistic to say if the US has X population and X percentage of death of that population
No,
versus
because you
South
have to
Korea.
go by the cases.
Well, look at South Korea, for example. 51 million population, 300 deaths. It's like, it's crazy
you don't
compared to
know
other
that.
countries. I do. It's on
You
the.
don't know
it's-
that.
You think they're faking their statistics, South Korea?
I
An
won't get
advanced
into
country?
that because I have a very good relationship
Yeah.
with the country, but you don't know that. And they have spikes. Look, here's
Germany,
one.
low,
Here's
9,000.
one. Here's one right here, United States. You take
Anyway.
the number of cases.
Okay.
Now look, we're last, meaning we're first.
Last, I don't know
We
what
have
we're
the
first
best.
in. As a what?
Take a look,
Okay.
again, it's
I just-
cases.
Okay.
And we have cases because
mean,
of the testing.
1,000 Americans are dying a day, but I understand on cases it's different.
No, but you're not reporting it correctly, Jonathan.
I think I am, but
If you take a look at this other chart, look, this is our testing, I believe. This is the testing, yeah.
yeah, we do more tests.
No, wait a minute. Well, don't we get credit for that? And because we do more tests, we have more cases. In other words, we test more, we have... Now, take a look. The top one, that's a good thing, not a bad thing. The top, Jonathan.
If hospital
top
huh, were
is
going down and deaths were going down, I'd say terrific. You deserve to be praised for
Well, they
testing,
don't
but they're
even-
all going
you know,
up.
they
Okay. You know I'm getting serious because the headphones are coming off. There are two big things I want to say about that. One is that his insistence on how we shouldn't be looking at death in proportion to population is absurd. Of course that's a relevant statistic. Of course that's a relevant statistic. Is it maybe also valid to be looking at death in regards to number of cases? Yeah, but you can't just dismiss death in proportion to population, especially because if there's a population that has a disproportionately high amount of cases, that means that they're handling the pandemic less well and they're going to have more deaths in proportion to population, even though they might not in proportion to cases. For example, let's say that there are two different countries that each have a population of 100. Now, one of them does a really good job of social distancing, wearing their masks, whatever. They have a really small spread, only 10 of them get sick. And out of those 10, 5 of them die. So the percentage in regards to population is 5%, but the percentage in regards to cases is 50%. And now let's say in the other country, also with a population of 100, they do a terrible job. They do the worst job they could have, and every single person gets sick. All 100 people who live in this imaginary country get sick. And out of those 100 people, 40 of them die. And so in regards to the number of cases, 40% of people die. That's less than the 50% of the other population, but in proportion to the population, 40% of people die versus the 5% in the other country. And so when you take that into account, looking at death in proportion to the population is way more important than death in proportion to the number of cases. And the other thing is that Trump keeps talking about how, oh, well, we have this disproportionately high number of cases because we're doing all this testing. We're doing way more testing than any other country, so of course we have more cases. But using that same logic, of course we have a smaller percentage of death in regards to cases because we have a disproportionately high amount of cases. So in a way, Trump is contradicting himself. By him saying we have this disproportionately high number of cases because we're doing way more testing than everybody else, he's kind of also saying that any statistic that's comparing the number of deaths to the number of cases is invalid. We have a disproportionately high amount of cases because we're doing more testing, so of course our statistic for deaths compared to cases is going to be lower than any other country. If other countries aren't doing sufficient testing, they're going to have a disproportionately high percentage of deaths per case. That moment just pissed my little math brain off and I needed to talk about it. Anyways, let's continue.
Let's move to Portland. I'm sure you've seen the disturbing footage of people in fatigues beating the Navy veteran.
No.
Well,
here you go.
it's there.
The fake news.
It's not fake news, it's on video.
For
Pepper spraying
59
him.
days, these people were anarchists and agitators and some protesters, but these were anarchists.
Okay.
These people were beating the hell out of the city. They were beating up our federal buildings and our federal courthouse. We told the police to stop it. You make sure. And the police wouldn't do it. Not the police.
Your own Justice Department and Homeland Security Inspector Generals.
Excuse me.
But your Inspector Generals are
Excuse
investigating
me.
unconstitutional.
You're trying now to blame law enforcement instead of anarchists.
I'm
instead
not.
of Antifa.
I'm not.
It's Antifa and anarchists that are causing the problems, not law enforcement.
I'm asking you about tactics and about the unmarked vans where they're rounding people up.
Do you know why they're unmarked?
Why?
Because these terrorists, these Antifa people, these people that are anarchists and agitators, when they see the name on a uniform of a person, a policeman or law enforcement person, they find out where that person lives. And then they go and they scare the hell out of the person's family. And so they do it for that reason. It's just common sense. There's nothing secret about this.
Are there maybe a small percentage of violent anarchists abusing the situation and doing it to destroy buildings or go after police officers or whatever? Probably, yeah, probably. I'm not going to deny that, but I'm also here to say that it's a very small percentage of people. Most of the people there are peaceful protesters who are fighting for a very just cause. And this whole excuse of, oh, well, they have to be unmarked because if they aren't, then these terrorists are going to go hunt them down. I have a hard time believing that's happening. I think the reason why everything is unmarked is so that they can get away with abusing their power, that nobody can attribute these terrible things that the police and that these federal officers are doing to the specific people who are doing it. That's the reason why it's unmarked. I have No doubt in my mind.
If you have the names on all of these uniforms, you'll have these maniacs in front of their houses scaring their family and their wives and or husbands, whatever it may be. I think it's a very good reason not to have your name. Why should you have identification? My name is Bill Smith, and here's where I live, and I'm a member of...
The really serious concern is
No,
the
that's
reports.
not
About
a
that.
serious
The serious
concern.
concern is the reports of people being rounded up and not being told why they're being detained. That's what's being investigated
Why?
by Mr. President. The
Why they're
inspectors
being
generals.
detained?
The inspectors
You know
generals.
why? You know why they're being detained? Well, yeah.
There's an investigation. Do you support that investigation?
Well, I haven't seen the result yet.
But do you
Let me see
support the
result.
initiative of it?
No, I think that actually
You don't?
I think Antifa should be investigated, not the law enforcement. They're investigating.
They shouldn't be investigating.
Have you been watching television?
I have.
Have you been seeing the violence? And
Sure.
Now, if you watch NBC News, like I watch NBC fake news, I'm watching it. Lester Holt, real beauty.
Turning to the rest of the country, we haven't seen protests like this since the 60s. I mean, we're seeing...
These are Democrat
Well, just if I can finish my question.
cities.
If I can finish my question.
And they're doing it for political reasons.
Two things. One, we had protests in all 50 states. So you can't just say, oh, well, it's only the Democratic states that are protesting. All 50 states are protesting. Maybe not now that it's a few months later, but back when the Black Lives Matter movement started picking up momentum again, all 50 states had a protest. Second of all, him saying, well, they're doing it for political reasons. Yeah, man, that's what a protest is. It's almost like that's the point, that they're trying to do a political movement. Oh my god. Also, I feel like this goes without saying, but people have a right to protest, so let them do it.
What does systemic racism mean to you?
I hope the answer to that question is no. Does anybody really answer that question accurately?
But what
Does
about not
anybody
hope?
really know?
What about analysis? What's your cold-hearted
I have
view of it?
seen where there is a difference, and I don't want there to be a difference. I don't like that there would be a difference. But with that being said,
Why do you think black men are
police
two
have
and a half
killed
times?
white people
I know, but why do you think black
in a
men
larger number,
in quantity?
police have killed white
But
people.
why do you think black men are 2.5 times more likely to be killed by police than white men?
That I don't know, but
Why? Why do you
I
think
don't like it.
But you must have thought
Why?
about it.
I
do you
don't
think?
know why, but I don't like it. I do know this.
Does it speak to
that
something
police
systemic?
have killed many white people also.
I hate that his argument, when confronted about police brutality towards black people, his response is always, well, they kill white people too. Two things. One, they are disproportionately killing black people. That's just a fact. We can look at the statistics. Two, that doesn't make it better. If you're like, well, the police are killing everybody, we still have a problem.
And what do you do about it then?
Well, I think we've already done a lot of
But you
things.
haven't. It still
Let me
exists.
just tell you.
No. I understand your achievements. I know what you're going to say. I'm not suggesting you haven't done a
I've
lot
done a thing
economically.
called criminal justice
I get it.
reform.
I'm just saying what
that your
changes.
friend, President Obama couldn't get
It's not my
done.
friend.
He
I'm
tried
asking about that
he
statistic.
tried, but he couldn't get it
I'm
done.
not-
I did more for the black community than anybody, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln, whether you like it or not. People say, "Oh, that's
You really
interesting."
you believe you did more than Lyndon Johnson, who passed the Civil
I
Rights
think I
Act?
did, yeah.
How?
Because I
How
got criminal
possibly did you
justice
do?
reform done. I got prison reform.
Lyndon Johnson.
I've done things. Well,
He passed the Civil Rights
ask,
Act.
how has it worked out? If you take a look at what Lyndon Johnson did.
You think the Civil Rights
how
Act was
has
a
it worked
mistake?
out? Because frankly, it took a long time. But for African Americans,
But you
under
think that was a
my
mistake?
administration, Jonathan, under my administration, African Americans were doing better than they had ever done in the history of this country.
I cannot believe that he just said, I've done more for black people than any president except maybe Abraham Lincoln. Holy shit. The interview pointed out more than Lyndon Johnson, you know, the guy who passed the Civil Rights Act. Also, like, Obama.
John Lewis is lying in state in the US Capitol. How do you think history will remember John Lewis?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know. I don't know John Lewis. He chose not to come to my inauguration. He chose. I never met John Lewis. Actually, I don't believe.
Do you find him impressive?
I can't say one way or the other. I find a lot of people impressive. I find many people not impressive. But no, but I didn't go.
Do you find his story impressive?
He didn't come to my inauguration. He didn't come to my State of the Union speeches. And that's okay. That's his right. And again, nobody has done more for black Americans than I have.
I understand.
He should have come.
But
I think he made a big mistake.
Stop. In response to being asked about John Lewis, he says, nobody's done more for African Americans than I have. John Lewis did so much for the civil rights movement. He did so much for the civil rights movement, and he served in Congress for so long, and he was so influential and did so many great things. Such an incredible man. And now Trump is like, I don't know how he's gonna go down in history. I don't know if he's that great. He didn't even come to my inauguration, and I've done so much for black people.
Do you find his story impressive, what he's done for this country?
He was a person that devoted a lot of energy and a lot of heart to civil rights, but there were many others also.
Mr. President, you've been so generous with your time, and we really appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. Great honor.
Thank you so much.
Jonathan Swan is the name of the interviewer. Good for you, man. I don't know if I would have made it for a full hour if I was the one sitting in there interviewing him. Also, just like, thank you, Jonathan, for calling him out when he was trying to derail the conversation and when he was saying things that weren't true, and just making sure that you really pressed him on everything that you wanted to talk about. That's great. I cannot believe that he is our president. Please vote.